All right, room entry seems to have slowed up a little bit, so I'll go ahead and get everything started. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the 33rd annual The Hartford Virtual Ski Spectacular's Return to Play Winter 2021 What to Expect session. My name is Kylene Davis and I am the Member Services Director with Move United, formerly Disabled Sports USA and Adaptive Sports USA. We would like to thank the Hartford for their longstanding commitment and support, as well as the Department of Veterans Affairs, allowing us to bring you this virtual opportunity today. Before we get into the session, we just have a couple housekeeping things to go over. So you will have noticed that all attendees are muted during this session. That's just to minimize distractions. Because this is a webinar, you'll only be able to see the videos of the speakers and presenters. If you have a question, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to submit it so that we can address it throughout the session. Closed captioning has been enabled for this session, and attendees are welcome to adjust the font size as needed. And please make sure to use your chat feature to introduce yourself to the other participants. Let us know who you are and where you're from, and make sure that your chat is set to all panelists and attendees so that we can all see it. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, I'm Kylene Davis with Move United. Joining me also from Move United is Julia Ray, our program director. And our panelists, this afternoon. I'm going to introduce them and then just ask them to give a little intro about themselves as well. So we'll start with Pat Addabbo, who's the Executive Director for Oregon Adaptive Sports.
Hi, everybody. So I run Oregon Adaptive Sports. We're a year-round adaptive sports program based in Bend, Oregon, serving 2 different mountains. I've been working in the adaptive sports industry since 2008, since starting as an intern working for Julia and Kylene and many other folks at the then DS USA office. Excited to be here and talk through how we're going to start out this winter.
Excellent. Thank you, Pat. We also have with us today Beth Fox, who is the Adaptive Committee Chair for PSIA Aussie Rocky Mountain.
Hi, good afternoon to everybody. Glad you're here and glad you're spending some time and have the interest in this topic. I'm an independent consultant in adapted sports and recreation. Been talking with many of you about this return to snow sports, and everybody on this panel has some great information for you. So I encourage you to keep sharing it as you go out into your community.
Excellent. Thank you, Beth. Also with us today is Jeff Inouye, who's the ski program director with Breckenridge Outdoor Education Center in Breckenridge, Colorado.
Hey everyone, yeah, my name's Jeff. I'm the ski program director out in Breckenridge, the Keystone programs as well. And just, I did want to say, you know, everybody here in Breckenridge and town of Breck and Beaver Run, we miss everybody and wish that we could have seen everybody in person, but it's good to have everybody here virtually, and hopefully we'll be back to seeing everybody next year. And yeah, we're ready to go out here.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Also joining us today is Kelly Pollak, who's the president and CEO of the National Ski Area Association. Kelly, thank you for joining us today. Can you give us just a little backgrounder on your role?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the invite. My name is Kelly Pollak. I'm the president of National Ski Areas Association, the trade association for about 330 ski areas across the country.
Excellent. Thank you. And also joining us today is Mary Ellen Whitney, who is the CEO and founder of Stride Adaptive Sport in New York.
Hi, folks. Nice to be here. Just a quick little description of Stride. We have actually 3 ski areas that we operate in 3 different states in the East. So our job is a little bit different because each of the states, as you know, are different regulations. Excited to be here again, and excited to get out on the snow and see it all happen.
Thank you. And just as a little brief introductory statement for the session, we did a session back in October that sort of, as a preamble to this, to sort of talk about setup and policy and development of policy going into the season. We wanted to use this session as sort of a follow-up to that, in that first session was more theory, and now we're getting into the start of the season. So we're starting to see how these things are coming into action. Julie, I'll let you take it away and just sort of seeing where everybody's at.
Yeah, that's great. I thought we'd start with any kind of really critical pieces that anybody wanted to share about what they had seen. Kelly, I know last time we heard from you about the Ski Well, Be Well initiative from the Ski Areas Association. How has that been going? Have you had to make adjustments or anything critical that has changed? I know it's just such an ever-evolving situation.
Right. So the Ski Well, Be Well document is going well. There was a regulatory piece to help us go out and work with folks, public health officials, to set the guidelines for the year. And then there's the piece that is customer facing, really to invite our customers to help us stay open by following some pretty basic COVID-related safety measures like wearing face coverings, physical distancing, letting them know that every one of our staff members will have a wellness check on a daily basis, things like that. So we haven't adapted that document since. That's there, it's the least common denominator, and that's the ski areas who are actually creating plans that are either stepped up or down based on what's going on in their region. And in that area, we're seeing a lot of movement. So as you all know, we all have to be flexible this year. Ski areas have opened on Saturday, and you've been able to make a reservation to sit down and have a meal in a restaurant. And by Sunday, the lodges are all closed down except for restrooms. And that's what ski areas have to do, is they have to have a plan so they can quickly communicate to their staff and their guests exactly what's going on. So that's more of what we're seeing is having close relationships with the regulatory authorities, public health officials, and being able to flex.
And I just want to ask a quick follow-up question to that. Are there any recommendations you'd have for adaptive programs listening in working with the regulatory authorities at their ski area?
Yeah, what we're hearing is that the ski areas that have an ongoing communication, that's what's going best. And, you know, they're checking in and they're doing daily checks. So, you know, you might have a stand-up meeting or a group text where it's like, nothing's changed since yesterday, or this has changed. But what they're doing is they're communicating on a daily basis, and they have that one point person who is keeping that relationship open. The other thing that is really important that we're hearing from our ski areas is the staff interaction. You can't communicate enough. Like when you're over communicating, you communicate a little bit more, because the employee health, their mental health, it's something that has been underestimated during some summer operations. And we're getting word that the advice has to be to focus on that. So that's what I'm hearing, and that's some of the resources that we're trying to prepare for our membership, because we know they're going to be even more fatigued as the season goes on.
Great. And shifting from operational into the training and education space, Beth, I wanted to touch base with you. Back in October, you were talking about anticipated changes to the way that training and education was going to be delivered, online trainings, potentially online movement analysis. Now that the season is sort of rolling open, is everything going to plan? Are you seeing any major shifts based on what was being expected?
Yeah, we made a lot of plans. We set up a lot of things. And as Kelly alluded to, we've just been adjust. So what I would say to people is that if you're looking for education through PSIA this year, look virtually. There are live events in all of the divisions, but be prepared to sign up for some division, contact you and say, we've just been told that we can no longer host this event at that ski resort. So there's just been a lot of movement there with scheduling. You know, it can become frustrating, but if we know that up front, instead of getting frustrated or angry, just say, I got to roll with it. I've got to look again. And when you go onto the snowpros.org website, and you look under the COVID, if you search for COVID, it'll send you to a page where on the upper left side of the page are all the divisions, and those are hyperlinked, and you can click on those and then see what's happening with their policies for COVID, with their events, things like that. If you move further down the page, there is the access to the PSIA Aussies navigating the 2021 snow sports season. And then a little further down, you can click on the Ski Well, Be Well piece that Kelly was just talking about. Each division is doing their own thing. I will say that we've had some exams already in Rocky Mountain, and movement analysis, for example, was being done outdoors with viewing iPads, and that worked really well. But it was unusually warm here, and it was 55 degrees. So now we've made a shift and said, nope, this is all movement analysis is going online for this division. And so people will learn more about that when they register for events. Central, for example, most of their exams, the entire exam is online, not just the movement analysis portion, but the entire exam. So again, stay in contact with your division, and as frustrated as it might seem to you, just please remember that all the people working at the division are changing and having to be agile and move with changes on a daily basis. So they're working their buns off for us.
Thanks, Beth. And moving over to Pat, you've seen a little snow in Oregon so far. What's been the movement over there, or the trends? What have you learned in these early days?
We are just gearing up to really get our season rolling. So we have our staff training kicking off tonight. We are doing a hybrid virtual and in-person training program. We also operate over a couple mountains. So we have Hoodoo and Mount Bachelor. One stark contrast that we're seeing is the difference in which each resort is approaching their own operating. So that certainly has been a challenge for us, just to make sure that our plan works organizational-wide, but also in respect to both mountains. From the last time we talked, everything was a little bit theoretical, and we put a lot of focus on teamwork and developing our plans, which has been very successful. So my programming team, led by Katie, who's our operations director, really put together, I think, a concise but well thought out plan. And we've done our best to communicate that to our community. And I think what you're hearing from Beth and Kelly is sort of a recurring theme is patience, and we're all in this together. So by the athletes respecting the policies that you put in place, that allows us to then serve more people all season long. That allows ski areas to stay open. So that's something that we certainly have been asking a lot of people, is patience and teamwork to just help each other through this. It's not easy for anybody. And I think being 8 or 9 months into this pandemic, everybody is getting a little fatigued of it, but also understands that. So it's just going to be a recurring theme for us, that what we're asking our participants and athletes to do this season, just like the Ski Area Association is asking all of the guests, is really in their and all of our best interest, by wearing face coverings, by scheduling 2 weeks in advance, by really following every protocol that we put in place. And I will say, we opened registration on Monday, and I think by that afternoon we already had about 40 approximately reservations booked. So the demand is still there. People are willing to go out and they want to make it work. So we're encouraged.
Yeah, I think when we spoke last time, you had said about clear communication being really critical, and it sounds like that's proven out.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody to go to our website. Feel free to look through and pick apart our operating plan, OregonAdaptiveSports.org. There's a button right on the homepage that outlines our operating plan, and there's also 2 links that we've posted. One is our updated essential eligibility criteria, which includes mentions of face coverings, and the second is a 2-page really COVID detailed plan. Jeff, I believe, was instrumental in helping to review that for us. So thanks, Jeff, for that. Certainly collaboration has been key. But we have everything, I think, in one place that everybody can review in a matter of 15 minutes or so if they take the time to read everything. So hopefully we've communicated what we need to our athletes and our volunteers.
Awesome.
And Mary Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong, but you started and then had to stop due to weather, correct? But you have had some.
We didn't start the program, but the mountain has, one of the 3 mountains has opened, and they were only open on the weekends. But I went up and I spent a couple days on the snow just to see how operations were going to go. And it's a good thing that we're all in adaptive, because that's what I was observing, is that the area would start out with a plan and then abandon that plan and move on to something else. And I think everybody was testing how the lifts were going to run and how would they open the buildings. And thankfully, they weren't overrun with a lot of crowds the first couple of days that they've been open. So they were able to get things up and running. And you know, I think the last time we talked a lot about mitigating fear for people by showing our care and concern and doing everything possible. And at Stride, we've been really working hard at putting our plan together, as all of the adaptive programs, and I think all the ski areas are all doing. And the challenge for us is that we're in 3 different states, and each of the states have different operating regulations and then the operations within the resorts themselves. But the nice thing that I'm seeing in the East is that Connecticut and Massachusetts ski area associations are all working together. So their guidelines for the ski areas are pretty consistent, and haven't really seen that happen before. And it was exciting to see the ski areas all come together and collaborate. So one of the challenges that we have, because our states are small and the borders are so close, is that a lot of the population come from a different state to ski. Like, for example, in the Berkshires at Jiminy Peak in Massachusetts, and the restrictions for travel are not reciprocating in each of the states. So, for example, New York, half of their employees work in New York, work at an area in Massachusetts. So the area has issued a letter for us to keep on our dashboards, stating that we're an employee, so there's an exemption for that. And then the other issue then is that the enforcement, and I did see a statement from Massachusetts Area Association that there's no way that the authorities can enforce some of the travel restrictions. So at this point, there's, I guess it's the Department of Health, the local and state police, and there's another regulatory body, maybe Kelly knows, that are all put out the restrictions. But what happens is the ski area just puts a notification up that says you either have to have a negative test with you, results with you, or you have to quarantine when you come in our state, but nobody's enforcing it. So we're not sure what's going to happen. And some people are questioning ethics and some people are questioning government, and you know, it's very, very confusing. So each day is different, and we're kind of taking it one day at a time.
Yeah, it's certainly complicated. Thanks, Mary Ellen. Jeff, moving into Colorado, tell us a little bit about what you're experiencing in the Breckenridge area. I know cases have been high, unfortunately, and so how's that changed the roll into your season?
Yeah, you know, it's definitely being flexible and having a plan or different plans is important. We are all, you know, prepared to do our thing and get moving here. And then a couple of weeks ago, we moved into a higher level of restrictions in Colorado, specifically in our county, that put a little extra restrictions on our program. And you know, the thing, like people were saying, even within Colorado, a lot of the counties are different in how they interpret the different levels. So in certain places, they're, you know, have higher restrictions, even though they might be at the same level as we are, which, you know, again, is challenging for everybody. But again, we've had to adjust a few things. We have started lessons. We started lessons Thanksgiving weekend. Things have been going great so far. You know, I think reiterating the communication piece with the ski resort specifically for sure, and staying in touch with them, and really you know, staying on top of these things is really important, as well as obviously keeping in touch with your local public health and things like that. But we've had to make some adjustments on the fly here, and you know, I think that's the topic of the season, and we're just going to have to keep rolling with that. But you know, I really feel like the ski resorts, Vail Resorts specifically, have been doing an awesome job, and they were, you know, very prepared and have been, you know, calm and very good in their communication with everybody. You know, with all these challenges, it's tough, but they've been, you know, really good about communicating with us and communicating with their pass holders and guests. And you know, as hard as it is, like, you know, people were saying that you book I think Kelly was saying you know, you book a reservation for a restaurant, then all of a sudden the next day, you know, it's to-go dining only. And so everybody's been rolling with the changes and doing the best we can to keep this under control. And again, I think having plans, or having you know, being prepared for any of the situations has just been key for us.
And there was a lot of emphasis in our talk in October about the importance of good relationships between the adaptive programs and the mountains they're operating out of, and it's being echoed again here today. And we wanted to get into a little more about resort access and reservation systems and that sort of thing. And Mary Ellen, I wanted to hop back to the exemption that you were talking about in terms of staff traveling across state lines. We actually had a question come into our Q&A about that. And the question is, does the employee exemption extended to Stride include Stride program volunteers as well? And if not, how are you handling out-of-state volunteers participating this year?
Well, the exemption applies to any employee at the mountain. It's not just to Stride. So it's for any employee that works, you know, out of state that comes in. And I believe that is part of the state regulation for a reciprocal for both Massachusetts and New York. And what was the second part of the question you wanted that person asked?
Well, specifically about volunteers, if they didn't, if that exemption didn't extend to them as volunteers instead of employees, how is that being handled? Well,
we're considered employees at the mountains. So we sign all the employee work there, and although we are volunteers, it's kind of a dual role. So I believe it's different at Catamount. So I would think that they would do something similar and consider it volunteer work would be the same, but I haven't heard anything regarding that. Yeah, it says a letter that was issued to all employees. So, you know, the question that came up was, what about the family members and all of the benefit packages that go along with it, and then our students? So we've left it in our communications as it's a personal choice as to how you approach this. If you feel uncomfortable crossing the border and you think that it's, you know, there's an ethical reason that you shouldn't be there for spreading, et cetera, then it's your choice and nobody's going to question that. But we're finding that, you know, I think that most of the family members and the guests that we serve are signing up for reservations regardless where they live. And they've been given the information as much as possible that we can give to them. So it's their choice and no one's questioning it.
Gotcha. And in terms of the reservations, I believe all of you are doing pre-reservation requirements. Is that correct? I don't think anybody's doing day of reservations. Mm-hmm. Pat, you mentioned that you have not seen any sort of impact to demand, that folks are signing up for reservations. Is that what you expected, or did you expect a dip?
No, it is what we expected, and so we're happy to see that. And same with our volunteers. The biggest impacts to our volunteer program, one is we're not accepting new volunteers, at least as of right now. We're relying, fortunately, on a strong returning volunteer base, and we have seen strong interest there. the biggest concerns have been around some of our comp pass programs that we're not offering this year, not around the virus. So encouraging in that regard. But I think everybody is really excited to get outside. I think perhaps more than ever, and it's good because we know that we will be busy. We'll fill our lesson slots. I think there's still that pent up demand from an early end of season last year. Typically our ski resort is open until Memorial Day. We run lessons into April. So certainly we missed a few weeks of our programming, and I think everybody's really got that pent up demand. So hopefully we can kind of manage that. We've also had a really great early season snow. So we have about a 40, 50 inch base already. So people are really ready to get out. So all those things are interesting to navigate, but we think that it's going to be good and that people are ready to go and they'll follow the rules.
Are you going to be able to meet this demand, do you think, or are a lot of people going to be left hanging?
That's a good question. My gut feeling is we probably will turn some people away this year because of lack of availability. But I don't think it'll be such a drastic amount that we feel that we approach things incorrectly. You know, we're forecasting to run about 700 experiences for us this winter. We usually run about 1,000, so that's still 70% of our normal winter season. We've really shifted focus to half-day lessons, where before we offered a lot of half and full days. So we think that by the end of the season, everybody will have had enough opportunity to ski. They may not get to ski every day that they want to, but they'll get their share of opportunities. And that's the same messaging that of our 2 resorts, Mount Bachelor has a parking reservation system. And that's the same messaging that they're really portraying to the community, that with a little bit of patience and a season-long kind of outlook, if you have that ability to ski throughout the season, that you'll get enough of your ski days. You'll feel like you'll get your money's worth, so to speak. And I feel the same way, though everybody may not get every day that they want, that they'll get their fill.
Yeah, I think you'd said about the half-day thing, which sounds like it's going to be a good idea. Jeff, what are you seeing? Is it? I think last time you had mentioned about 25% volunteer use you're expecting. How's that going out?
Yeah, I can comment a little. Just, going back to, I think with Breckenridge, of course, we're a little more of a destination type of resort, than than where Pat is a little bit, and Mary Ellen. Of course, Beth is over at Vail. They're very similar to us, but I've definitely seen a little decrease in reservations, and there could be a lot of factors involved with that. One being the reservation system that Vail Resorts has put in, and things like that. I've had a decent amount of calls from people that have said, we're not going to come out this year. We're going to stay local and ski with our local resorts. Can you pass on our progress reports and things like that to other folks? And, so I've gotten a few of those. So I think people, also I think people are kind of waiting until, a little bit longer than they normally would to kind of see what's happening and to make reservations and things like that. So I've seen a pretty good influx of reservations for Christmas time, of course. But, say right now and even Thanksgiving weekend is usually a pretty busy weekend for us, and reservations were not too high for that weekend. So I'm feeling that a little bit. All the local folks want to come, and we're going to try to facilitate that as much as possible. But I do feel like some of the, out of state, and of course, we do work with a lot of international folks, and definitely those people are, waiting to see what's happening and things like that. So, but we've made some adjustments, and that's one of the tough things, is predicting what that lesson load is going to be, and trying to keep your staff, busy and employed, and, depending on those levels. And that is definitely a challenge right now. So yeah, we'll see how things kind of pan out, but that's kind of what's happening here right now. And
the next thing I wanted to touch on is we've worked with all three of your organizations to serve military population in the past. And what I would love to hear from each group on is how that factors into your planning for this season. Are you still going to approach groups? Are you still going to work with VAs? And while we're hearing from these groups, we also wanted to put a poll out to the attendees to see, for those who are in program planning, where your programs sit with this. Are you working with military participants this year, and how does that weave in? So Julia, if you want to go ahead and get that poll going, so if folks could answer that, we'll just leave it up for the time being. But Mary Ellen, we've definitely worked with Stride in the past to support veterans programming. How are you looking at that this season? Is that going to look different? Oh, and you are on mute.
So I couldn't see myself.
There you go.
Okay, the poll went up in front of me, so I couldn't see myself. Yeah, we're the veterans that we've worked with in the past that we call alumni will be able to come anytime they want and sign up just any other, you know, the way any guest would sign up. Our programs, we're starting to consider that it might be best for us to take alumni that already have a little bit of experience. And we're actually going to try and make it more of a winter escape feel to it, and do some other activities other than just skiing, because generally we have the large groups that come together and we won't be able to do the large gatherings for the meals and the hotel stays and all that. So we've put a plan together that involves bringing them, but it may be a little bit less looking like a camaraderie kind of thing. It'll be more offered for families to come in their little bubbles, and we keep the families together and work together that way.
Great, and I believe that our poll has ended, and just to give a snapshot of where folks are at, it looks like for the most part, there's a shift away from working with those veteran populations, but there is quite a bit of in-person programming. I'm wondering if those of you in the audience who are planning on doing in-person programming for veterans could maybe in the chat, if you feel comfortable, let us know if like Mary Ellen, you're maybe going to work with alumni of your program, or if you're actually seeking out new relationships. And if that's the case, how are you going about that? Are you working directly with VAs? Just to give us an idea. So if you could populate the chat with that, that'd be great. Pat, I don't know if you have any insights as to how this looks for OAS this year.
So we are reminding me that I owe Julia an email about our plans, but we typically have a large veterans event in January called our Heroes Weekends. Our plan this winter for that event is we're pivoting it to sort of a Heroes winter long program. So we're offering veterans free skiing, up to 3 days of free skiing with us. We do typically have most of those veterans sign up through kind of an open enrollment process. We do a little bit of outreach through regional VAs, but we have our own veterans mailing list. And pretty much all of them live within a day's drive. So we are going to work with some local lodging to see if we can set up some safe and then compensated lodging for these veterans to come and participate with us. Most of our veterans come from within the state, so we feel like we're still abiding by those travel advisories. But similar to Mary Ellen, just taking what has been a big group event and just kind of putting it out there for everybody to come and make their own Heroes Weekends. They can come with their family member or caregiver and participate with us. So we'll see how that goes, but we think that that's still a good opportunity. We are looking at transitioning what was a late or mid-spring kind of event to an early summer ski event, when we might be able to combine some things up at Timberline and the Mount Hood area and bridging our ski season into the summer. But that's all very much still to be determined.
And Jeff, what about BOEC? Are you weaving in military participants to your planning for the season?
Yeah, you know, we've worked a little bit with the Denver VA and you know, in the past. Most of my groups, military groups that I work with, are folks like Team Semper Fi and folks like that, and they are still in the process of figuring out what they're going to do and what they're going to allow, And, you know, a lot of them that are associated with VA hospitals, you know, some of the VA hospitals are not allowing their participants to travel yet and do, you know, these activities. So, you know, we have worked with, you know, the Wounded Warrior Project out of Colorado Springs. We work with a lot, and you know, they are still trying to do some programming with us. I've already had some individuals, who was just here, Adam Pawlak, who has been coming to Ski Spec for years now. He was coming out here anyway, so he's been skiing with us this week. So we're still going to do individuals, and, you know, we work with a lot of individuals that are local military guys. So we're going to continue that, and we do a program with like Chris Werhane and Adaptive Adventures. We partner with them on a military program. So those are more of the programs that we do that aren't directly related to the VA hospitals. And we're going to try to do as many of those as we can. But, you know, again, a lot of them are still in the process of figuring out what they can do and what they can't do, if they can travel, if they can't travel. So it's still in a lot of the planning stages. I know we're going to have our normal handful of individuals, but I'm hoping to do some of these groups. In what capacities and numbers is still a little questionable.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing in the chat, there's other groups that are hitting barriers in terms of working with groups that are putting holds onto reintegration projects and that sort of thing. So it seems like that's just sort of the standard.
Yeah, I know in much of our outreach to do with this event, Ski Spectacular, we wanted to invite veterans to get engaged locally with programs, and it seems to be very individually based. So we'll see how that goes through the season. I want to go to Kelly on another topic, so switching gears here, and talk a little bit about our experiences with any positive COVID cases or anything that's happened at a resort in your experience yet. Has anything like that happened? Last time we talked, you'd had a recommendation about having a really good set of operational procedures so that those having to deal with a situation like a COVID positive case did not have to really think about what to do. They had a very thorough checklist. Has that played out anywhere, or have you refined your guidance on that at all?
Yeah, that's one of the areas that we're actually trying to beef up our guidance or beef up the resources, because our members are asking for more resources when it comes to quarantining, testing. And we definitely have ski areas right now who have staff in quarantine. It's just going to happen. And to think that it's not going to happen wouldn't be a prepared attitude. So definitely, you know, breaking up work pods. So if there is somebody who tests positive, you don't have to have everybody quarantine until a test. You know, keep your eye on the CDC. There is new guidance coming out. There may be new guidance today. I haven't checked, but last night, that's what I was hearing, that with a negative test, the quarantine time would be reduced. So that would be something that you definitely want to check. If it happens in your work area, there are ski areas or ski companies that will be, that have purchased testing. So of having to go to something that's being provided in your region, you would be tested right at your mountain. And, you know, a lot of the talk we're having right now is what is the best type of testing if you're going to make that investment, if you're going to have that stockpile. So we're doing research and trying to provide that back to our members. Does that answer your question, Julie?
Oh yeah, no, that's very, very helpful. I think the idea that you mentioned around podding can definitely apply to some of our programs who maybe need to think about even going as far as keeping certain participants with regular instructors or you know, volunteer and instructor groups together. I think that's a really, really valid point.
Yeah, the 15 minutes, you know, 6 feet, 15 minutes is really, really important when you're designing how much time people are together. And that's also cumulative. So I'm trying to think of a good situation in your area, but I'm thinking of a person a wait staff member. They may not be with a staff member for 15 minutes, but if they're with them 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and over a 6-hour shift, it's cumulative. That is just as troublesome. So break it up. Do you stagger starts? Do you if you have 2 people working with a guest, do you switch out who those people are? It's all those things that you have to figure out, which I'm sure you are all going through those scenarios already.
Like, for example, fitting a sit skier.
Yeah, exactly. And I think last time as well, we'd spoken about engaging family members with participants who needed that to be within somebody to be within that 6-foot bubble. But, of course, we had questions or concerns about their expertise or ability to assist safely. Has anybody had any experiences they want to comment on about that, if that's been successful? I know that was one idea.
Yeah, Julia, we've been talking about training family members. So if you're going to engage family members, having them train, whether they're going to help someone with a seating, getting seated in a sit ski, or whether they're going to be helping with lifting and loading, the training period would be important. And then how much training can you do upfront? How much pre-experience training can you give to them? So can you meet with those family members online, let them know, help them understand the expectations, so they understand, oh, I'll be lifting my family member, and I'll have to ride the chairlift, and I'll have to ski down. So that you get family members with the appropriate skills before they come to the lesson, so everybody is understanding. And then we've been working with the idea of if someone does have to have an assessment, can we do that online? Can we do that via Zoom? If some help needs to happen in person, are we wearing some different kind of PPE? Does a face shield come in now? Is someone who is not teaching lessons, do they come out and are they in close contact for that 10 minutes with the person, and then they're out? And then the instructor doesn't burn up their 15 minutes in 24 hours, which is the CDC recommendation. The instructor doesn't burn that 15 minutes up, because if they are lifting, loading, they're going to have that close proximity time. So can you pull others in? Can you pull in or use some different PPE? And can you assess in different ways so that you don't have to have that close proximity?
And something we talked about in the last session was screening protocols. So in advance, either self-selection, self-assessment, but we also talked about on-site protocols, and Kelly mentioned testing. Jeff, I specifically wanted to touch base with you because something you had mentioned on our last session was you still didn't know where to land on temperature taking, and I wanted to circle back and see if the OEC had to further develop their protocols and where that stands.
Well, yeah, I have not been doing temperature checks on our participants so far. Now, again, we haven't had a ton of lessons since we opened last Friday. But again, talking to a lot of you folks and a lot of people in some other Zooms about that and the possible complications, with the temperature outside, and that the guns need to be, or the temperature guns need to be at room temp, and the person needs to be at room temp for a certain period of time, things like that. With our participants, we've been doing a standard symptom check outside with them before they participate in our program. Now, that being said, with these new restrictions that our county is at, I am not allowing anybody in my office anyway at this point. And I'm only doing independent type of lessons where the instructor can stay outside of that 6-foot distance and things like that. If we get to this lower restriction, or if we move to a lower restriction and I go back to kind of my original plan of having people be able to come into my office, obviously a limited capacity and things like that, I think that changes that a little bit. I'm still trying to do temperature checks and things like that with my staff. that have been inside and will be inside and can be more at room temperature and things like that. But that's where I kind of landed with the temperature check thing. And I know, you know, there's people on both sides of that. So it is a tough one, but we're, as Beth said, you know, we're incorporating a lot of PPE, and if we do have any sort of contact anywhere within my office, within 6 foot of an instructor, of a student, then we are requiring the filtered face mask that we have and a face shield. That's, you know, a no questions asked sort of thing. So we're doing the best we can on that part. But yeah, that's where I kind of landed on the symptom check.
Gotcha. And I mentioned, Mary Ellen, that you at Stride have a great pre-assessment tool to share with participants before they come. They can take a look and sort of run through symptoms and see where they're at. Do you have any protocols for your staff and volunteers, and what does that look like?
Yeah, the way we're setting it up is we came up with a giant Tupperware that has all the PPE stuff inside of it, including the clipboard that has for contact tracing, and we'll have all that information electronically, obviously, because everything will be reserved in advance. And one of the things that I think is really going to maybe be something that we take into the future from all of this is making the assignments with the coaches. They will be able to communicate with the family prior to the lesson start during the week. So they sign up, they can talk about how the lesson's going to go. I went up to Jiminy Peak area and I did a videotape of here's where what it's going to look like from the parking lot all the way up into the building. This is where you can enter. Our lessons are going to meet outside, and the coaches will meet their students outside, and they should be prepared and ready to go for the most part, other than, you know, those that need to get fitted into equipment. And the PPE Tupperware is going to be located in an employee area only, where the coach will go in, get the clipboard, do a quick temperature take, everything that we need to do to get them going, throw it back in the box. Radios are going to be assigned to individuals for the season so that we don't switch radios. And then off they go on their lesson, and they'll remain outside for the most part. And mostly everyone through the assessment tool is signing up with family members, and they're excited about it.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. We're plowing through this hour, so I want to make sure we get through a couple of other topics we had on our list. I want to talk a little bit about masks. You know, it's something that, as we were talking amongst ourselves before, should be pretty obvious. We're well heard by now about recommendations from the CDC around mask wearing. But obviously, in a real life situation, has anybody experienced any problems with asking people to wear masks and how they've dealt with that? I was wondering, maybe Kelly, if you could talk from the kind of National Ski Areas Association of any issues you've heard about or things that have come about in the early days of the season, and then feel free, any of the other panelists, to chime in on their experiences with mask wearing so far.
Yeah, what we're hearing from our members, and I'm sure that Beth and Jeff are witnessing this, Vail especially, what they're doing with their staff is empowering their staff and asking them to, you know, really be upfront, polite, but enforce the masks. So you are going to hear in their lift lines, you know, masks up, please, because the feeling is across the country, if you start on day one enforcing people wearing masks, you're going to have compliance. If you let it go, you're just never going to be able to get control of it. We have had some members who have sent us questions, people who are saying that they are exempt from wearing masks for a number of reasons, including over the weekend, a customer who presented a religious card exempting them from wearing a mask. We've done all of the research work, and none of that is true. And you can say with confidence that for safety reasons, if you'd like to participate, you'll have to wear a mask. And if you don't wear a mask, you can ask them not to participate and, you know, come back next year. That would be, you know, wouldn't be the best option, but it's an option. We invite you back when you're willing to wear a mask, or when masks aren't mandatory. But Some of these things that people will say and cards that they will produce seem extremely convincing, and it's not the case. And you just have to provide your staff, your team, with a little bit of script to help them with that.
That is really interesting, and thanks, that's useful information. And somebody had followed up in the chat with a question about whether resorts are accepting gaiters as masks right now.
Yes, so it depends on the ski areas. As you mentioned, Julia, the CDC recommendations, gaiters or buffs, a lot of us have been wearing them for years. The recommendation is 2 layers of cloth. So certainly you could fold it down. Most of the skiers that I talk to are like, we're just trying to have something covering their face and nose. We're not getting into details, but with our own staff members, we're requiring that it's doubled or a regular mask. And you're going to have to check at the ski area that you're going to be working at, because it is all over the place. But what I can say is that every ski area that I talk to, as they should, it's right there in Ski Well, Be Well. Masks are required no matter where you are, unless you can physical distance 6 feet. And that's usually only when you're skiing or riding.
Mm-hmm.
So Kelly, at our ski area, our operations manager told our staff that we were to wear, actually many of the ski areas, my understanding is that they're hiring COVID employees. So there will be people that are enforcing that's their job. And in the lift line, we had an employee that is standing at the gate and checking to make sure before you ride the lift that your mask is on. But also we were told that you can take your mask down while you're skiing as long as you're 14 feet away from other skiers. Have you heard that, or is that?
Yeah, so Mary Ellen, great point. Ski Well, Be Well, it's physical distancing. If a ski area wants to have stronger safety requirements, they can. So if your ski area says 14 feet to err on the side of caution, that's absolutely what you have to follow.
I hope people are at least skiing 6 feet apart.
I was going to say 14 is probably where I want to be anyway.
At least. It'll be interesting to see if people will distance on the slopes and if that actually reduces our number of incidents this year.
Yeah, and Vail is giving out, 3-ply masks to their staff. I'm sure Beth knows this, and they're also giving out 3-ply masks to the guests as well, if they are giving out masks to folks. And so they don't have any, specific requirements aside from just face coverings as far as getting on the chairlift and things like that. I do have some more specific requirements within my office on certain things. And as some of you have heard, like the Summit County that Park City is in Utah, they ban buffs, as sufficient face protection. So you can't wear, a buff into the grocery store there. So again, it's just, you just got to see what's going on at your particular resort and follow those guidelines.
Yeah, I really like the takeaway, Kelly, around providing a script for your staff and volunteers, because if you do get any resistance or questions, then everybody doesn't have to figure out or be put on the spot around what to say. So that's really, really helpful. I'd be curious from any of the adaptive programs panelists as well, as far as participants go in masks. Obviously, we often serve people who might have a hard time communicating verbally or maybe hearing impaired, and the mask can obviously impact things. Have you had any difficulties as far as participants go, or those on the autism spectrum who might have an aversion to wearing the mask? I know we talked about some strategies, sending people home or at least asking people to practice wearing for longer periods at home and things like that. Any other lessons learned you wanted to share today?
I've, of course, we've done some lessons. I think the biggest thing is just that communication, with whether it's the participants or the families when they call to make their reservations, or the groups you're working with. But, everybody that I've talked to and all the groups, fully understand when I tell them, look, this is not a negotiable thing. if they're not going to wear a mask in my office, they're not going to be able to participate this year. And I really haven't gotten, much flack on that. And I think if you're open and address it ahead of time and explain the situations, that people have been good. I even got an inquiry just a few days ago from a girl who's hearing impaired that wanted to take a lesson with us. And she said, look, I know with the mask restrictions, I read lips, but I know we're going to be required to wear a mask, and I'm not going to be able to do that. So I'm wondering if you have an interpreter for me to, since I won't be able to take my mask down and read lips. And she, even she was very understanding of the situation and willing to abide by it. And so I haven't gotten, any feedback or any, bad negative stuff on it. Again, I think if your communication and let's be honest, if you have a child with autism, if you're working a school, whatever, I mean, that's what they've been working on, right? For the last how many months is trying to get those kids, used to wearing masks and things like that. And yes, some folks it's been a struggle, and others it's been fine. But again, I've gotten, a lot of buy-in, which makes me feel good, that it's not something I'm continually having to battle with on a daily basis.
Yeah, I've seen on my social thread lots of these really slick, clear, fog-free mask options now. So the see-through ones, so those are good to check out. Really quick, we've got just a few minutes left, but I just want to mention lifts, because this was a big topic of conversation last time, and how we were going to navigate that. I think I was having a conversation with Kylene before this about how one resort was trying to wipe down all the bars and the seats, and it lasted about 10 minutes. So how has that worked out with participants? We obviously have seated skiers who need assistance getting on and off. Has that caused any problems? Anything anybody wanted to comment on as far as lifts go?
Julia, we're really advocating that instructors have space in between themselves and their guest. If a family member can be there, great. They're in their cohort. But for loading, to use a short pole, a piece of PVC, a rapid gate that's old and cut off, that's no longer than the width of the lift, so that the participant can hold one end, the instructor can hold the other end. Maybe you color code one end and then tie a colored surveyor tape around the hands of the participant so they understand which color they're supposed to grasp. Use that for loading, unloading, if that would have been a person that needed a little physical assist in the past. And then for those who need to have the harness hooked in, they've got a harness or a seizure belt on that the instructor reach in, hook it in, and then move over to the other side of the chair. So resorts have different width requirements on the chair, but just to be aware that if you are coming into the exit zone, or even when you're taking off, that you're not unbalancing the chair, that you've got too much weight on one side, that you stay over and separated until you are under the housing and then move in. And if that means that you need to slow down to exit, I suspect that the resorts would prefer that you have a slow down and you get off safely and you get off, rather than having to stop the lift to untangle you and, something like that.
Excellent points and ideas. I hate to cut this conversation short, but we are up on time. And so I did want to thank everybody for attending, especially our panelists. It's been a very valuable conversation, and one that we anticipate is going to continue throughout the season. This seems to change week by week. So we anticipate we may have several more follow-up sessions just like this one. So we'll keep everybody posted on that. But with that, for those in attendance, please take a minute to fill out the survey that's just appeared in your chat box. We appreciate any feedback you can give us on this session. It helps us plan for the future. You should also see that survey pop up when you exit out of Zoom. It should automatically pop up as well. If you could also share a takeaway or just a fun memory from a previous event on social media and tag us with #SkiSpec so that we can kind of keep everybody in the loop and help make this feel like a collective event. So again, we appreciate your time. Panelists, thank you so much again. And everybody have a great evening.
Too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
So